Hotep, and welcome to Matters of Diversity with Dr. B. Today, we are going to be looking at Black excellence as it really relates to higher education. And I got three experts, three phenomenal individuals who are going to be talking with me today, and I'm excited about what they're going to bring to you all. And I'm hoping that you all are actually going to listen in and hear what these experts are saying about where we're going to move this narrative in terms of making sure that Black excellence is what matters when it comes to our life here at the University of Central Florida. So let me bring them in. We have Peter Delfayette. He received his BEE degree from the City College of New York in 1981, the MS degree in engineering from the University of Rochester, and his philosophy and PhD degrees from the Graduate School and University Center of the City University of New York. His PhD thesis focused on developing and utilizing a real-time, ultra-fast spectroscopic probe to study molecular and phonon dynamics in condensed matter using both supercontinuum and optical phase conjugulation techniques. After obtaining his PhD, he joined Bell Communications Research as a member of the technical staff, where he concentrated his efforts towards generating ultra-fast, high-power optical pulses from semiconductor diode lasers for applications in ultra-wide optical signal processing and communication. So we're going to have to dig into that a little bit more to understand all that he was doing. In 1993, he moved to the University of Central Florida, where he is a Pegasus Professor and Trustee Chair Professor of Optics, EE, and Physics in Creole, the College of Optics and Phonics and Photonics, and is currently serving as the Director of Towns Laser Institute. In 2003, Dr. Delfayette founded Radiance Incorporated, a spin-off company developing high-power, ultra-fast laser systems based on his research for applications in medicine, consumer electronics, defense, material processing, biotechnology, automotive, and other key technological markets. He is a fellow of the APS, the IEE, the NAI, the NSBP, OSA, and SPIE. He is also the recipient of the NSF PE Case Award and the APS Edwards Bouchet Award, the medalist for the Florida Academy of Science, the Townsend Harris Award, the IEEE Photonics Society's William Stifers Scientific Achievement Award, and the APS Arthur L. Shallow Prize in Laser Science. Most recently, he was elected into the National Academy of Engineering. Now listen to this, you all. He has over 800 scientific publications, conference proceedings and presentations, and 44 US patents. It's going to be fun talking with him today. He has achieved so much. Next, we have Dr. Berry. She is the UCF's Vice Provost of Student Learning and Academic Success and is the Dean of the College of Undergraduate Studies. In this role, she drives efforts to offer students in her college robust programs while supporting university-wide initiatives to advance undergraduate education, take learning beyond the classroom, empower students to seamlessly transition to UCF, and promote student success. Dr. Berry works closely with the university's provost, the deans of the university's 13 colleges, and leaders of academic units to create and sustain a learning environment that enables students to thrive academically, professionally, and civically. And last but not least, we have Dr. Rose Susan D. Barty. She serves as the chair of and tenured professor in the Department of Education, Leadership, and Higher Education in the College of Community Innovation and Education here at UCF. Dr. Barty has previously served at the University of Mississippi in the capacity of a tenured professor and previous program coordinator of educational leadership at the University of Mississippi. Dr. Barty has held national administrative appointments with the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, the National Council for Accreditation of Teacher Education, and the Frederick D. Patterson Research Institute of the United Negro College Fund that's located in Washington, D.C. She received her Doctor of Philosophy in Educational Policy Studies from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and a master's degree in liberal studies from Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois, and a bachelor's of arts degree in English from, I think this is Tougaloo College in Jackson, Mississippi. So let's bring them all in and just have some fun today, because this is about Black excellence. And so first thing I want to do is ask you all your thoughts. What is, in your mindset, Black excellence? And then maybe in some cases, is excellence just excellence? And where does that Blackness fall into the equation?
Well, since no one else wants to jump in, I think I will start the party.
Start the party.
So in some sense, I like the first part of your comment is that excellence is excellence. However, where the Blackness comes in is in the style that we are able to achieve that. I think we all recognize that with our culture, we have a broad, rich history of style and the way we are able to do things. And that is what I think we bring to the Black experience of being excellence.
All right, excellent, excellent. I appreciate that. Dr. Barty, I see you unmuted, so I'm excited to hear what you got to say.
Well, let me thank you, Dr. Butler, for this exciting series. And I think it is one that is definitely needed and one that is appreciated. When you think about Black excellence, I think about three terms. I think about competency, I think about constructivism, and I think about courage. When I look at competency and the ability to have some kind of intellectual capacity to simply be able to think clearly and critically in a way that can articulate the issues of the day, I think of Black excellence. When I think of constructivism, I think of being able to be considerate of the various challenges that exist in a way in which we have to be able to look at things through a different lens and be able to call them out in ways that we may not like, but also be able to affirm those things in the ways that we like. That's Black excellence. Nice. And then I think of courageousness. If we have competency and constructivism without courageousness, then it is all for naught. Okay. Being able to take a stand against the grain, being able to be the first, but not the last. Those are things that I think fundamentally not only describe, but also operationalize what Black excellence is. From competency to constructivism, and then to courage. That's how I see it, Dr. B.
I see, and I appreciate that. You better go ahead. And I'm going to ask Dr. Theodoria Regina Berry to bring it on home. What's Black excellence?
So first of all, I'm a philosopher by training, and I think about things from a very different viewpoint than many of my colleagues. But I would agree with Dr. Barty that there is a certain level of competency from a mainstream point of view that raises the bar in relationship to this notion of excellence, right? What is the norm, and then what exceeds the norm, right? But excellence in and of itself, and particularly when we talk about this notion of Black excellence, is a social construct as well. What might be viewed as excellent in one space amongst one group of people could be viewed very differently outside of that group. Okay. And I, raised in a bicultural household, had two different viewpoints around this notion of excellence in relationship to how we excelled and when we excelled and what that notion of excellence looks like in various settings.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, what that was really about was, I agree with Dr. Barty in relationship to this notion of competency above the mainstream, but also confidence, which is the piece that comes out of my Caribbean background, and this notion of this self-assuredness that you have to have about yourself in order to be able to know that you can excel, right? Half of the notion of excelling is believing you can excel.
Nice.
And to be able to do that regardless of your particular circumstances. In fact, not only regardless of those circumstances, but also in relationship to those circumstances. In my household, we were expected to excel because we were Black, not in spite of our Blackness. So that's how I would answer that question.
So your Caribbean roots are laid where? And can you kind of share how that might be different than maybe different aspects of Caribbean experiences?
So my father's family is from the Bahamas and Barbados. And my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, immigrated from the United States as a child with her parents here to Florida, actually. She grew up in Miami and then met my grandfather, whose family is from Barbados, who immigrated into South Carolina originally. And then they both ended up living in about 30 minutes from here in Sanford, Florida. And from the very beginning, even in my childhood, when we would visit my grandmother, she was very insistent that we be able to conduct ourselves in a particular manner. And in doing so, that would not only give us a sense of self-awareness about who we are and the pride and confidence that we were supposed to be able to walk into a room with, but also how others would see us. And that would in fact instill upon us the confidence to excel in every aspect of our lives. And so that's where that comes from.
Excellent, thank you, thank you. And here I am talking and muting myself at the same time. So Dr. Duffyette, can you kind of talk a little bit about just your career journey? I'm really excited to hear how you have just been so accomplished in terms of the things that you have done. Your latest accolade aside, I was struck by 44 patents. So can you kind of talk about your journey and how you got to where you are today, and what motivated you to continue to move forward, especially in environments where maybe it wasn't as nice or kind to individuals coming from the Black or African diaspora?
Sure. It's obviously, my story is long. I'm just as old as everybody else, so I'll try and give you the condensed version. As you mentioned, I grew up in New York City in an extended family household with my grandparents, my father, his two brothers, and my two sisters. And with that type of family structure, it was ingrained in the heads of myself and my sisters that we would be excelling. You know, there was no second thought about it. It wasn't an issue of what do we do after high school. It's, you will be going to college. This is what it is. And interestingly enough, growing up in New York City, we were very, very fortunate enough to have the sort of the city university system, which was the free college system. It was a public school system. And to put it bluntly, you know, my father was a fireman in the New York City Fire Department, and my sisters and I were all each a year apart. And so there would be no way that my dad would be able to send myself and my sisters away even to a state college, much less afford the tuition and the room and board. So we were basically destined in some sense to go to the free school. However, having said that, both my sisters and I exceeded all expectations and have done very well. So fortunately, with that experience, I was then able to go to graduate school on scholarship and go to Bell Communications Research. And I was very thankful to have an opportunity to work among some of the world's greatest scientists. And the level of the bar was quite high, but nonetheless, I just sort of always operated in a way that let's just try to do the best I can. And I'll try to paraphrase what a good colleague of ours, Professor Kenyatta Roberts, had said to me at one point. He said, "Gee, Peter, you know, many people operate where they basically just try to go out to where the boundaries are. You seem to operate as if there are absolutely no boundaries." And so I think that is another important characteristic of how I've been able to sort of, you know, lead my life and perform my research, and also another good indication of what Black excellence is as well, ignoring where the boundaries are and just going beyond.
Well, you know, the important part of what you just shared is that family has so much to do with where our trajectory is going. When we have that support, that love, that nurturing, we can move mountains, right, in terms of where that goes. And so I'm still excited to hear more about your journey, but I want to bring in the others to see, you know, what was it like for you all? You each talked about family kind of being your mechanism of support, or the ones who were channeling you towards education. What were the messages that were taught to you that let you know that you had every aspect of Black excellence within you?
I too had the similar experience in terms of the role of family. My mother and my father contributed immensely into both my brother and me. My brother is currently a faculty member at Prairie View A&M University, and he is in athletic management. And so that was his trajectory. And so they strongly believed in education. They strongly believed in education and what it meant and what education could lead itself to or lend itself for. And so I'm reminded of one of my favorite books of all times, and it's by Dr. Seuss, "Oh, the Places You'll Go." And my trajectory has taken me many places. And because of that trajectory, recognizing the impact and the influence of the role of family, I cannot deny. In terms of the values, in terms of the capacities that were instilled in me, that's what led to me being where I am, that foundation. And one thing that I do recall was this idea of always seeking to be the best that I could be. It was never in comparison or in competition with anyone else. I was it. And so in that vein, I'm reminded too, as a former athlete, that when I was on the track field, I remember very clearly needing to run in my race, in my lane, whatever that lane was. Because anytime in track, those who understand relay running, if you look to your left or to your right, you're going to lose your balance. You have to keep looking straight ahead.
That's the prize.
Looking onward, looking upward, but you cannot look aside, because when you look aside, you get off balance.
Okay.
And so that kind of value, I think, has propelled me and sustained me, because I am in competition with Rosusan Barty. No one else but Rosusan Barty.
All right, all right.
You talk about Black excellence, it's recognizing who you are.
Okay.
What is your purpose? And then using that knowledge of who you are and whose you are, that purpose, and then running your race.
So you bring up something that makes me wonder, because you know you have a athletic background, so the mindset of athletes is about moving forward in excellence and doing things along those lines. But there had to be detractors. There had to be people who wanted to get into your lane and kind of throw you off guard, right? Whether they be from your own community or whatever have you. How did you persevere past those people who were trying to kind of, you know, to stop your journey towards your excellence?
Well, I think part of it is that's in the preparation, because when you're prepared, you have to have weights. In fact, the detractors, they're part of my preparation. I embrace it actually, because it strengthens me. So if you want to be in leadership, one has to be able to deal with opposition. one has to be able to deal with detractors and deflection. And so consequently, it becomes part of the process. And unless I had come to realize that, I could not sit in the seat that I sit in now and the seats that I will sit in later. Instead of trying to avoid it, I embrace it. Do I always like it? Absolutely not. But do I recognize it's fundamental to my race? Fully and completely. And so realizing that piece of it, I'm going to be an active participant. I am an active participant in my own life. I don't stand on the sidelines. I am in the game.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Dr. Berry, since you've come to UCF, I've had the opportunity to sit down and talk with you on various occasions. I know the power behind what you do and what you stand for. Can you kind of talk about what your experiences have been like to get to this Black excellence stage of your career?
So first of all, I have to say that I've had quite the gratuitous route to this particular position. I did not start out as your plain, ordinary, run-of-the-mill garden variety academic who took the very straightforward path from undergraduate school to master's degree to PhD and tenure track position, so forth and so on. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that route. And quite frankly, there were days when I envied the people who were able to take that route. Mm-hmm. But instead, I'd spent 10 years in federal service, primarily working as a trainer for individuals who were in the military, going to foreign countries and getting involved in how to engage with individuals with different cultural backgrounds. And spent 6.5 of my years in federal service overseas in Germany. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, earned my master's degree, and in fact, earned 2 master's degree and an ed specialist degree before coming back stateside to do my terminal degree, and then had a 3-year postdoctoral research fellowship through the American Educational Research Association at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Mm-hmm. All of that being said, I carried with me in all of those spaces a couple of things that were important and had been part of my upbringing as lessons to carry with me. And the first of which was that to maintain sort of an asset perspective to things rather than a deficit perspective to things. Never let people tell you what you can't do. Always focus on what you can do or a different way that something might be able to be accomplished. And as a result, even in this particular position where there are lots of policies and procedures and guidelines that we have to follow in relationship to how we deal with our students, how we deal with faculty, how we manage money at the institution, there may appear to be, to some people, roadblocks to getting certain things accomplished. Mm-hmm. But from my perspective, and the way I was raised, is to see them as opportunities to do something different or to find a different way to do it that doesn't cross the line of breaking the rules, mind you. But there's always another way to do something. The other thing that I carry with me is this sense of self-awareness about who I am, where I come from, and what I stand firm on, and to always recognize that those things are valuable, and to learn the lessons that have also been helpful to me, but also those lessons that I've learned from other people's experiences. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I have 2 older brothers. I'm a middle child, and I am the typical middle child. Right.
Okay, I get that connection now. Okay, we middle children. I have 2 sisters. I'm a middle child of 2 girls. You're a middle child of 2 boys?
Yes.
Okay.
So I actually, there are 5 of us. So I have 2 older brothers. I have a younger sister and a younger brother.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things I learned, my older brothers rather grew up during the 70s with lots of turmoil and protest movements, the Black Panther Party movement, all those things were going on. And so they did not want to follow some of the advice and guidance that our parents and grandparents offered, because from their viewpoint, it was antiquated. This is not what we believe in anymore. And they're walking around fist up in the air, that sort of thing, right? And not to say that they didn't have a good point, but what I learned from that was they missed out on some opportunities along the way.
Okay.
Because they were so wrapped up in what was not happening as opposed to taking advantage of what was happening. And so I learned from that and paid attention oftentimes to, even as I was going through high school and college, the kinds of things and decisions that people were making that were not advantageous, and making mental notes to myself. I don't want to do that because this is where it could take me. You know, so by the same token, I was also taking mental notes on people who were doing things well and accomplishing goals, and saying to myself, here are some of the things I may want to do in order to get to where I want to go. Part of my discipline in relationship to how I've gotten to where I am comes from my background as a musician. I'm a classically trained musician. I have
learned something new today. Okay, what instrument?
I studied voice.
Well, can you study? That's right. That's right. You told me that. That's right. And then I see that piano behind Dr. Barty,
Right.
and so we might have to go into some kind of we might have to just go into some kind of
Trained classical pianist. How about that?
All right. All right.
And
All right.
there's
So
a
I cut you
discipline.
off.
There's a discipline that Dr. Barty knows you have to practice every day.
Right.
And you have to hone your craft, and you have to be diligent and dedicated to it. And having that from childhood into this moment in life has always been sort of ingrained in me, to know that even as an academic, when I was going through the tenure track, that meant that I had to make time for myself every day to write, in much the same way that I had to make time for myself every day to practice. And that kind of diligence and persistence has paid off for me.
Excellent. So we're going to come back to what the influences of being overseas was on your Black excellence, but I want to move to Dr. Delfiette, and kind of, I want to hear from you in terms of what is it like to kind of be in the position to found or to create entities, right? I'm drawn towards Radiance, and I'm wondering what that experience was like for you, and what do you instill in others? What do they need to learn from your experiences that could help others who are looking to kind of put their stamp on different things that they're creating? Sure.
Well, I certainly don't want folks to walk away thinking that whether it's developing new technologies or doing a spin-out company is quite easy. When you are plowing new fields, there are a substantial amount of potholes, cow patties, underground mines, etc.
The mines.
And many times you may think you have people trying to guide you, but they may be guiding you towards the landmines.
Yes.
So those are things to be aware of. It's challenging. However, I think the most important feature is, if you believe in the vision, is to keep with it. There's perseverance that's required. I just want to touch on something that Dr. Barty said with respect to her being a track star. My uncle was a runner as well, and he would take me running. And we were doing long distance running. And I'd say, Uncle Bill, I'm getting tired. So he says, when the tough gets going, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. So this went on for several minutes. And then I said, Uncle Bill, I'm still tired. He says, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen. So that was a wake-up call.
Wake up.
So I certainly didn't want to be left alone in the woods in the park there. So I kept going. So those are some of the things that I think are important to keep near and dear to your heart.
Right. That's how we learn perseverance, right?
Perseverance, it's a challenge. There will be people that are there really to help you. There may be people there that, as you say, if you don't want to help, get out the way, but maybe they want to stick their foot out to trip you up. Those are going to be things you have to expect. Just be aware of that. But it was a challenge. I loved doing it. It was a great experience. Lots of ups and downs, but the fact that the company became successful and hired lots of students and made money and all of that stuff. I'm very pleased at that accomplishment.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really the misnomer, is that where people just happen to make it to this place where they have some sense of success without people recognizing that there have been barriers placed all along for us to be able to go there. So while we may have the mindset that we want to persevere and that, we have the will to be excellent, there are people who are going to try to shoot down your dream and just for their own gain, for the most part. So there's a question that came from YouTube that I want to ask you all. Can you speak to, and this is somebody by the name of CR Packers. Can you speak to some of the boundaries and obstacles you have encountered along the way on your way up, and how have you overcome them?
Well, I think I'll speak to one particular situation. So I was on the tenure track. I had just finished my postdoc at UIC and became ill. I'm actually a cancer survivor. And it's interesting to know the ways in which, as I was talking to my oncologist, stress really contributes to that. Yes. And as I'm having these conversations with the oncologist, and because her notion of being a college professor, she's like, oh, this is one of these jobs that everybody wishes for. It's a piece of cake. Yes. You only have to show up on campus a couple of days. You get to do the research you want, so forth and so on. And when I started talking to her about some of the things that I had to do and some of the kinds of stressors that I was encountering from some of my colleagues, particularly when you're an assistant professor, she said to me, it is no wonder that your situation isn't more serious, because stress is a major contributor to cancer. Okay. And she was, and when she started explaining that to me, and it really taught me the value of self-care.
Yes.
And I will say that one of the things that was connected to that was the fact that when you're constantly going and you're trying to write and go to conference presentations and prepare for classes and so forth and so on, one of the things that I was guilty of in that moment was the fact that there were signals that something was wrong that I ignored.
Okay.
And because I was too busy, trying to push off all the detractors while doing my work and dealing with students who were being interestingly difficult.
Interestingly, huh? Interestingly difficult.
Yes. Well, I'll say more about that in another moment. But nonetheless, I knew there was something wrong, but I'm too busy involved with all these other things that were keeping me off focus from taking care of myself. And as a result, my situation was one that probably could have been easily treated without surgery, but I ended up having to have surgery. Okay. So one of the things that I often tell new faculty members or even graduate students is that, there's a significant importance to self-care in this business.
And can I just say really quickly, and this is in regards to self-care, and I thank you for that, for sharing that. Part of self-care is being able to kind of talk. There's been so many things that have happened, I believe, in Black and brown communities where we are told to hold it in, to not take anybody else with you. When you have this particular thing happening to you, you keep it to yourself. Maybe you might share it with your pastor or something along those lines, but you hold it in. And the gift that you just gave just now is that you let people know that part of your self-care is allowing people to know your story and your full story, right? And let you know that I had cancer. I battled through cancer and I'm still here today. And I'm telling you about Black excellence. And I think that is the key, is that part of our self-care is to be able to share who we are in our fullness without it then taking us and then like you said, add to the stress, add to those different things, because there's a whole lot of things that are coming our way anyway. We don't necessarily have to add to it ourselves. And so I just thank you for sharing that part of your narrative.
And I think that's a very important part of the narrative that Dr. Berry shared about self-care, because I must say, I have not always been that one, because I typically will just continue on. And now I have evolved to a different point to be able to value the importance of that. And not so much that it is a negative part of it, but it keeps us from being in touch with ourselves in a way that can be beneficial to others. And when we're thinking about self-care, I think of it in terms of our capacity to be able to serve others. If we don't first care for ourselves, first preserve ourselves, self-preservation is the first law of nature kind of thing, then we aren't able to serve effectively and efficiently. And so being able to be transparent in a way that can encourage someone else in his or her journey, I think is very important. And life has taught me that. I have evolved to that point, and I'm still evolving because of the fact that that has not really been my socialization.
Right.
So I'm recognizing the importance of doing so and being so in a way that I think is very rewarding. It's very rewarding.
So it also makes you relatable, right? And it makes your journey attainable for others who don't see their way. That's how we role model for people that you can be here too. This is part of your narrative and your story as well. And so thinking about that, what kind of lessons do you all have for people who are watching and people who need to know about entering into higher education and in that journey? What lessons have you been able to learn that you want to share with them in terms of how they can also obtain Black excellence?
Well, I will add that I went straight through from the bachelor's degree to the PhD, from Tougaloo College to Northwestern University to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And that worked for me to be able to go point by point. And so then after having pursued academic credentialing, I ended up in Washington, D.C. That was part of what I wanted to do, was to be in our nation's capital, because I wanted to serve at that level. In fact, I had other aspirations for the political arena in Mississippi, but life has taken me in a different direction. And so consequently,
actually, self-care might have taken you in a different direction.
Self-care may have taken
I'm
me
joking
in a
with
different
that
direction, right? So being open to what that means in terms of not setting boundaries on yourself. I was always taught that go into places that no one has been and not be afraid of those places. I think Dr. Delpit talked about it earlier about no boundaries. That was me too growing up, no boundaries. I didn't self-impose boundaries. And even if they were imposed outside, it didn't matter. I'm still going to go in that direction. And so consequently, having attained the being first professor, tenured professor at the University of Mississippi in educational leadership, there's no boundaries. And all of these other first, no boundaries. And then being able to also bring others along the way, no boundaries, because that's very important. It is a mindset. It is a mindset, and Dr. Berry talked about it earlier too, about confidence and the belief in yourself. I just believe that whomever and whatever needs to be put along your journey as you're running your race, that those things will be put there. And so those things that I can control, I seek to control. Those things that I can't, I just can't. And then it may just be moving me in a different direction. And so, Dr. B, I think it is significantly one's mindset
Yes.
that either can propel or not.
I hear you 100%. And so the question I have for you all is in terms of mentorship and role modeling. And I'm wondering who were your mentors? Who are the people who were role models for you? Because in very much most cases, I think with people who are achieving, I know for myself, I didn't have people in my life that led me to a PhD. I was in a real sense, a first generation PhD student. While my mother had a master's degree, she had her master's degree when I was in high school. There was nobody who had even went past the master's degree to get a PhD. So I'm still the only one in my family with that. So who were your role models? Who were the people who helped to set the stage to let you know that, that you can go beyond just, maybe your limited way of seeing the world and recognizing that you can have success at a higher level of education?
Yeah, let me jump in here because I want to share with you a story. One of the most important people in my life, other than my family, was my 5th grade teacher, Dolores Middleton. She was a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority and got her.
Oh, you see that smile from Dr. Berry? You just got a big smile from Dr. Berry.
Right.
So I'm a counselor, so I pay attention to facial expressions. And Dr. Berry, I think Dr. Berry just fell in love with you all over again. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My stepmom's a Delta. Now my sisters are AKAs.
Uh-oh.
It's okay. It's okay. So, but the feature is that, she went to Brooklyn College probably in the 50s when there were not that many Black women, going to college and getting advanced degrees. And she instilled a sense of us. I'm taking her 5th grade class. This is about maybe 1968, 69. So you all know what's going on in the culture of the US and New York City at the time. There was a lot of drugs in New York, and you'd look out the elementary school window and you'd see people sort of, I don't want to say strung out, but lying out on the grounds of the monkey bars and the seesaws. And she would sort of say, look, this is exactly where you don't want to be.
Amen.
She would sort of tell us some of the things that we would experience in terms of you growing up and being at work and people trying to maybe steal your work or take credit for things that you've done. I mean, she would tell us the real hardcore truth. But as a result, she instilled such a sense of pride in us. She instilled such a sense of being able to accomplish things that it seems like almost everyone in my 5th grade class went on to do something quite well. And this school was 99% Black. And so this was, again, you're in certain neighborhoods, but it was one of the most important things that I sort of learned. And one last thing I'd like to say, as a part of that process, I learned to always sort of reach for the stars, because if you fall short and land on the moon, you are still in orbit.
There you go. That's it. That's it. Dr. Barty, Dr. Berry, who were your role models?
Well, obviously, my parents were significant in my role, in my life. And I've had different role models at different phases of life, because I think all role models bring something different at what you need at that time. So growing up, my mother is a former educator. And so there were a number of educator friends that I grew up around. And those women, I don't want to start calling names, but those women were significant in my life in ways when I was in different activities. They will prepare me for those activities, those women growing up. And then when I got to college, professors there, Dr. Dilla Buckner, who was my English professor, who was very much so a part of my matriculation in terms of writing, and Dr. Jerry Ward, who was there at Tougaloo College too. And then going to Northwestern University, I met another set of folk, from Dr. Phil Bowman to Dr. Eugene Lowe there at Northwestern. And then at the University of Illinois, met Dr. William Trent. Dr. Jim Anderson. Those were my mentors. And then I also met Dr. M. Christopher Brown, as well as Dr. Boyce Williams at different levels. And then Dr. Tom Burnham, who was my dean at the University of Mississippi and former state superintendent of the schools of Mississippi and so forth. And so there have been a chorus of mentors who provide a variety of things. And I say to students who I'm mentoring now, I let them know there's certain mentors that you need for certain things. And being clear on what those things are, they can provide for you. And so it's very important that we recognize how those things all work together, because it's critical in terms of the educational trajectory that matters. And so I think that I've had a variety of mentors, and they are consistently still a part of my life in some ways. And I just think it's very important to have them. But I will call out those women from back in the day, from Mrs. Martha Ross to Mrs. Mabel Hoskins to Mrs. Maudie Gearin. Those were the women, along with my mother, Dorothy Barty, and Howard Barty, my father. I mean, they just gave so much, and Mrs. Shirley Johnson. It's just so many. It's just so many who give in so many different ways.
Give them their flowers. Give them their flowers.
So I thank you. I thank you all for that important foundation that I received.
Excellent. Excellent. I appreciate that. Dr. Berry.
Well, needless to say, there were some key family members who were instrumental in making sure that I knew what my capabilities were. My paternal grandmother, who was actually one of the early graduates of Bethune College before it became Bethune-Cookman, and was a strong advocate for education, along with my parents, my uncles on my father's side, who were an interesting group of men, I'll just say, you know, my aunt and uncle on my mother's side. But I had some wonderful teachers coming through Philadelphia Public Schools, from my first grade teacher, Harriet Ballard, Marjorie Ewing, who was my third grade teacher, my fourth grade teacher, Avis Ewell, my fifth grade teacher, Madeline Taylor, who actually put me in the academically talented program, which really put me on a completely different path academically. My 12th grade English teacher, Sandra Johnson, who got me really sort of hooked on thinking about Black literature in a way that I had not been exposed to before. But it was mostly my music teachers who really taught me not only just the craft of engaging in music, but taught me some very valuable lessons along the way as well. So Eugene Allen, who was my first music teacher, when I was 9 years old, my mother started sending me to him, and he was giving me organ lessons and voice lessons. And then Judith Rosenfeld, who I had when I went to Settlement Music School, and Walia Daughtry, who was my department chair while I was at Hampton, Roland Carter, who is the choir master. And I still talk to him today, and he has always a wonderful gem to share with me, and words of wisdom, and whatnot. And so, yeah, but I have some of my mentors are some of the same people that Rose Susan has had mentor her, James Anderson and William Trent, who I got to work with while I was doing my postdoc.
Very nice.
But I also had some peers who in many ways also mentored me. We mentored each other, right? And some of them were Rose Susan's classmates. So Chris Spann, David Stovall.
6 degrees of separation is really strong right here. So just really quickly, I just wanted to say, each of you, when you talked about your role models, you just lit up. And that's the power of good people in your lives. There's a question in the chat, and I want to just really quickly. They said, could you point to any negative examples of people in your life, and that motivated you to say, I don't want to be like them? And you don't have to call any names, but maybe just say, maybe what we'll do with this one, because we're limited on time. Just say yes or no. Have there been negative influences in your life that you said, you just made me do another?
Yes.
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 Yes. All right. So I want to move away from that. I want to pivot a little bit because we're getting ready to kind of walk away from this podcast today. I would love to have each of you all back separately. I mean, you guys have rich stories to tell. So we definitely have to move in that direction. But the question I want to ask right now is, what are you reading? What is on your bookshelf nightstand right now that may inspire someone who's listening today? And I'm sorry if you don't have a book that's on your bookshelf right now because you got too much work going on in other spaces. What is your muse right now? What is motivating you to continue to do the work that you're doing right now?
Well, so I'll jump in there because that's always a tough question. I'm certainly falling into the category. I've got so many important things to read that my opportunities for pleasure reading has almost fallen off the screen. However, having said that, I'd like to certainly share the point that by just continuing to work hard and continuing to persevere, and me being able to be in a position where I can perhaps show the way to others how to be successful is what's empowering me and giving me the energy to continue to do what I do. When I look at the youth of today, and I'm actually happy to see how the culture within research organizations and academic institutions is changing to be more collaborative as opposed to competitive. Nice. I have a lot of hope for the youth of today coming along to do great things for the future. And that's what keeps me going.
All right, cool. I appreciate that.
Well, one book that I'm reading is a part of our book club in the College of Community Innovation and Education is CAST.
CAST.
Yes. And so that's a very quite enlightening and engaging book that talks about these systems. CAST is a system of oppression and what it means. And so that has been quite a joy to read with my colleagues. And I look forward to continuing to read that book. But that's sort of like my, I guess my professional read, my personal reads.
Right.
I love 5 Love Languages. I love that book and so forth. So I have to read different types of books to respond to me in different ways. And so I enjoy that book and I reread it to get further and greater understanding about it.
Excellent. I appreciate it. Dr. Berry, is there any one book?
No, there isn't one book because I read multiple books at the same time. I'm that person, right?
You're that person. Is
So,
there any wonder? Did we not know that already, huh?
So I am also reading CAST. I'm also reading a book entitled Racial Justice in the Catholic Church that was actually given to me by my parish priest because he knew I was interested in social justice issues. And so he recommended that as a read. But I am also rereading Bell Hook's Salvation and Love. Because I'm actually working on a book that I have been promising myself to finish for some time now, entitled Love and Education. And so, yeah, it's my passion project. And so I've been reading a lot about various sort of ideologies around love from the 4 different sort of perspectives, looking at agape, platonic love, romantic love, and family love, and how those pieces fall into various aspects of our educational life.
So I'm going to have to actually ask you to now work diligently to get this book done so that we can all pick it up and you can host a book club for us to be able to go through and learn the 4 aspects of love.
In the context of education.
Say that one time. In the context of education.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. That was really great. Listen, this has been phenomenal. I want to thank you all. I want to thank the BFSA for inspiring this as a podcast today. In light of Black History Month, in light of Black excellence, in light of just hearing your stories and letting people see that, you know what, we may have been able to find measures of success, but it comes with, you know, it's measured. It comes with costs. It comes with us really sacrificing sometimes to be able to move forward and do the things that we do. I am so appreciative of all of you. I'm in awe of just what you have been able to accomplish in your lives. It's no small feat to be in spaces where typically people who look like us don't get the opportunity. You all have found your place at the table. People are respecting you and putting you forth, and you are like the epitome at UCF of Black excellence. And so we want to thank you all for being a part of today's podcast. Is there any last minute things that you want to share or say before we sign off today?
Well, Dr. Butler, I just want to thank you for inviting all of us to share, and hopefully it is my hope that some one thing, some little bit of some one thing may have been useful to anyone who is listening.
Yeah. I love the approachability that you all are bringing to this table too, because I think sometimes when people move into different positions, people are like, I can't talk to them. I can't. You were just showing how much you are regular folk, you know, and that we can really still do great things and still be with our people and still be about making sure that we bond and mentor and be role models for people and still get this work done. I'm sorry, I think I cut off Dr. Barty.
Oh, no, I was just going to leave the audience with a poem entitled God's Minute by Benjamin Mays, Dr. Benjamin Mays. Only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced up on me, can't refuse it, then seek it, then choose it. Will suffer if I lose it, give an account if I abuse it. It's only just a minute, yet eternity is in it. So our time matters. We have been given so many minutes here on earth. So make it count.
Make it count. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And especially in light of all the things that have been happening in the world, especially in 2020, we experienced a lot of minutes, but the 8 minutes and 46 seconds is one that really is really putting forth you know, what you just said, you know, make every minute count. Dr. Delfiette?
Well, you know, it's very difficult to go beyond what some of these pearls of wisdom have been just recited. However, I would like to amplify the concept that Dr. Berry said, is that to learn from the experiences of others, because there's not enough time in life to experience them all yourselves. And those can be extremely useful learning processes that give you the ability to avoid the problems and pitfalls that are waiting for you out there.
Thank you for that. And so very quickly, I'm going to say on Friday, our podcast is going to be with the UCF Gospel Cultural Choir. I hope that you all can join us. Subscribe to YouTube, our YouTube channel. Those of you who are on YouTube, you all, I've heard that we have upwards of 70, almost 80 people on YouTube watching right now. So your words of wisdom have been imparted into a group of people who are going to then move forward and continue on with this Black excellence, right? That is where we're going. It's Black History Month, but not only is it Black History Month, it's Black History Year, it's Black History Decade. It's like, let's put it all on Black history, no matter what. We're not going to limit it to February. I have these 3 Black, phenomenal, excellent individuals here in my presence right now, and we're just going to move forward, and we're going to continue on this fight, and we're going to show you how to do it and how to do it right. And so I'm excited that you all were here today. Thank you. Join us on Friday. I want to thank the Foundation Office for supporting us. And with that, go enjoy the rest of your day, and see us on Friday. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.